Hello, everybody.
Hey, Clint.
How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. How you been?
Busy, but good. The right kind of busy, I think.
Good news.
Right? How about you guys? How's everybody at the county?
Doing well. Still clipping along as best we can.
Yeah, well, hopefully you start to get better here a little bit. I don't know.
I hope so.
Yeah. Still plans for August meeting to be in person? Too early to tell.
Yes, unless something catastrophic happens in the next few weeks and the governor does sort of an about face with things, I'm going to try to start getting these in-person meetings back together. Commissioners have started meeting in person for several weeks now. So I think we can definitely find a way to distance ourselves and still get together in person. We still probably won't be able to invite the public just yet. Not because of the issues with the number of people, but more trying to keep, the social distancing issues and stuff together.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But I kind of want to try to start putting us back to normal if possible. I know some other committees like Board of Zoning Appeals and I know our Ag Board, they recently met in person. So I think we can start heading back that way.
Okay. Well, that would be great if we could.
Yep.
So who do we have tonight? Let's see. I see Randy Wagner. I see David Klein, it looks like. Denny is here. So we're waiting for, let's say, BJ and Jeremiah.
Jeremiah won't be joining us tonight. He emailed and said that he's working on getting the harvest in tonight.
Understood.
Yeah. So BJ's the only one.
Okay. But we need him to have a, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
No, we shouldn't need him for a quorum.
Okay.
I think we have 4 now.
Yeah, I just was doing a head count here. Okay. We'll give it another minute or two.
Okay.
I'm going to mute for a minute.
Yep. So just as a reminder to everybody, we are currently streaming on YouTube. So keep in mind if you need to talk, you can unmute, but when you're not talking, go ahead and mute yourself so we don't get a whole lot of feedback and stuff.
Okay, I see BJ's here. I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Hey, Clint.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Washington County Planning Commission July 6th meeting. This is a virtual meeting only. Present tonight are Commissioners Dennis Reeder, David Klein, BJ Getz, Randy Wagner, and myself, Clint Wiley. We'll go ahead and get started with the first item on our agenda this evening. That item is minutes, and it's the June 1st, 2020 Planning Commission regular meeting minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to take a look at the minutes? And if so, are there any changes, additions, questions, comments?
This is Denny. I make a motion to approve.
We've got a motion for approval. Is there a second?
This is BJ. I'll second.
So Denny filed a motion and BJ seconded it. All in favor, please say aye and state your name.
Denny Reader, aye.
BJ Getz, aye.
Randy Wagner, aye.
Okay. Opposed? So moved. Under new business, we have Forest Conservation, Gaver Meadows, FP-20-002. There's a request to utilize off-site retention to satisfy the 20.6 acre planting requirements and remove 9 specimen trees from the site. Location is 607 Beaver Creek Road, and the planner is Travis Allen. Travis?
Travis Allen, Comprehensive Planner with Planning and Zoning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so as stated, this is 2 different requests to satisfy forest conservation for FP 20-002 at 607 Beaver Creek Road in Funkstown. The 2 requests, as stated, are to establish an off-site forest easement and to remove 9 specimen trees from the site. There's a number of different town plans that have come in for review by the county. And because this is a town plan, the county only reviews for specific elements of that plan. It's mostly approved by the town. So forest conservation being one of those elements that we review. So in regards to the offsite easement request, this again deals with Forest Conservation Ordinance Article 10, that preferred sequence of mitigation. That article describes the preferred sequence of techniques for mitigating forest conservation, from on-site planting and retention all the way down to the payment in lieu of option at the bottom of that sequence. The intent of the ordinance is to either preserve or create as much forest on site, or at least in the same watershed before moving it elsewhere in the county to retain the environmental benefits in the same watershed. So if deviating from that sequence, justification needs to be provided by the applicant and reviewed by the Planning Commission. Off-site planting is a less preferred option in the sequence, but still fairly high up in that list. And documentation of both this decision and the specimen tree variants are reviewed by DNR, which we send to them. The specimen tree variants, specimen trees which are greater than 30 inches in diameter are prioritized for retention under Article 8 of the ordinance. So their removal requires a variance under Article 15. That article states that the Planning Commission may grant a variance where, owing to special features of the applicant's property or other circumstances, the standards or requirements of the ordinance would result in unwarranted hardship to the applicant. It further states that the variance must be consistent with the spirit and intent of the act, and the relief granted will not adversely affect water quality. So that's kind of the 2 things that the applicant is meant to demonstrate, both the conditions of hardship and then any effects on water quality. In support of this request, you have a few different pieces of information. The memo summarizes their request. The picture that you see on your screen now and came in your agenda packet is a page from the Forest Conservation Plan. It both shows the specimen trees to be removed as well as those to be saved, and the long rectangular easement at the bottom portion of the map would be the off-site easement that they are requesting to place on an adjacent parcel. You also have 2 different justification letters from Frederick Seibert in support of these requests. Looking at these requests individually in terms of the off-site easement, the development does propose to satisfy the majority of their planting requirement on-site, which you can note from the map there, both through planting and retention. And as you can also see, the area that they're proposing for the off-site easement is located immediately adjacent to the project site. So it's about as close to being on-site as you can be with it technically being considered off-site. Secondly, in regards to the specimen tree variance, the applicant in their justification letter contends that the proposed development would not be feasible without the removal of these trees. They go on to note that of the 22 specimen trees that were delineated on site, 13 are proposed to remain. In that letter, there is no evaluation of the effects of water quality that would result from the removal of these trees, so I can't really give you a clear evaluation of what impact they would have. But I would point out, again, as you can see in the map there, that a good portion of the easements located along the western portion of the site are located in the floodplain, so there will at least be some water quality benefits from that. But again, you have two requests before you. One, for them to establish the offsite easement, and then secondly, whether they are granted the variance or not to remove the specimen trees.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Members of the commission, are there any questions for Travis? Any comments? Please remember, if you do wish to make a comment or ask a question, that you must unmute yourself. So I'll give it one more opportunity for anybody to ask any questions or make any comments.
But we're going to handle 1 and 2 or do it together for, we're going to handle off-site easement first and then 2.
We could. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. It's one agenda item, but
Yeah, we could lump them together then, couldn't we? Be all right?
we could, yeah. I mean, if there's a consensus that the commission would rather address each one of these separately, we could do that. But otherwise, there's no real issue with having them together in one motion.
Okay. Yep. I'm fine with any questions.
All right, hearing no questions or any additional comments, I would need a motion to move forward.
Clint, this is BJ. I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Jenny, I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. So we have a motion for approval and a second. All in favor?
Jenny, aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So carried. And Jill, that would be everybody here. Denny, BJ, Randy, all in favor.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the motion, that is for both the mitigation and the tree removal variance.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, we'll get it in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda this evening, under other business, a proposal to modify land use with an RB, or rural business zone, at 17318 Shepherdstown Pike. This is a determination if the change is a significant change per section 5E.7 of the zoning ordinance. And Rebecca has this. Rebecca?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Rebecca Calamer, Chief of Plan Review with the Division of Plan Review and Permitting. I'm kind of introducing this item today as it doesn't clearly fit. It's upon the applicant to kind of make their case here. As you read in the description, it's a proposal to modify the existing land use within the RB zone at 17318 Shepherdstown Pike. That is southwest of Sharpsburg, currently occupied by Antietam Gallery, with the proposal here for a Dollar General. Again, we don't have anything officially in our office right now under review, so this will essentially determine the path forward next for the prospective project. I'm going to go ahead and read you section 5E.7. So this is under the RB article in the zoning ordinance. Changes in land use. Changes of land use in approved RB floating districts shall be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Applicants may present information to the Planning Commission delineating how the change of land use may or may not be consistent with the approved site plan for the property. Only land use is permitted in the RB district described in section 3.3 land use chart of the ordinance will be considered by the Planning Commission. It will be the determination of the Planning Commission as to whether or not there has been a significant change in the use and intensity of the property that could result in the need for a new public hearing to approve the changed use. So in your article or in your agenda package, you should have received a letter from Mr. Adam Hager with Frederick Seibert, who is essentially the applicant in this case, as well as some attachments with that, with the current conditions and a conceptual drawing of what they're proposing. And unless you have any, Adam also had forwarded some pictures, which I think are up on the screen right now. And I also had received 2 emails that should have been forwarded to your attention from some concerned citizens in the area. So at this point, it's not really a public issue, but I wanted to bring those to your attention so you could be aware as you kind of deliberate on this. So unless you have any further questions of me, I'd like to turn the floor over to Adam to present what he wishes.
Adam?
Yes.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. This is a site that we're working on. It's 17318 Shepherdstown Pike. Again, it's currently the Antietam Gallery. It's southwest of Sharpsburg on the Shepherdstown Pike. It's currently zoned preservation with the RB overlay. Located on Maryland Route 34, which is a state highway. So one of the things that I know the RB zoning is looking for is road adequacy, and we feel that this is definitely a road that's going to be adequate for the use that we're proposing. It's served by public utilities, so it's kind of an ideal site. What we are proposing fits on the site. It fits well where we have adequate parking to meet all the requirements of the county's planning zoning ordinance. My clients have kind of been searching around the different areas trying to find a good place and a good fit for this, and they feel that it's a good site. It's definitely a good place for the people of Sharpsburg, for the people that live there. I know they've spoken to many of the residents, and they were actually they were approached and they were kind of told that this is a site where it would be a good place to have a Dollar General, and they met with the client, and apparently the owner of the Antietam Gallery has been discussing on downsizing his business, retiring. He's been in business there for over 27 years. I know the ordinance specifically states about how it's an RB overlay and it's the approved site plan, which in this case it's a little bit different because this business was in place before the RB zoning came around. So the RB zoning was kind of laid over top of this. So there was never really a site plan that I'm aware of that was approved for this. So it was an existing site that was given the RB overlay. So it's kind of hard to compare a site plan to what we're proposing. All we really have to offer is what the site currently is. Looking at the site, this is kind of the first step in a long process of what we need to do to get this site plan approved. The first thing we need to do is have this meeting with the Planning Commission to determine if we need to go through. And it says that if the Planning Commission determines that it's a significant enough change in the intensity that would require a public hearing, and it's a little bit more than just requiring a public hearing. From talking to planning staff and just doing some research, it kind of almost goes through the RB rezoning with multiple public hearings and goes through a long process, which working with my client, that's something that we really would like to avoid. We don't feel that it's necessary. If we have this meeting and the planning commission feels that, a public hearing is not necessary, our next step would happen to be that we would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So in a sense, we would be having a public hearing anyway, where if there were anybody in the community that had any opposition or had any concerns, we would be able to have the public forum for them to express their concerns. And, if there's anything that, maybe they want us to incorporate into the design, we can still hit that in the beginning process of putting this plan together. And then also while we're doing the rezoning, the Board of Zoning Appeals, not the rezoning, but when we go through the Board of Zoning Appeals, we would also be dealing with the historic preservation community. This does have the historic preservation because it is so close to Antietam. I think the pictures that we sent in was that's a site that my client had went to visit. It's a Dollar General template that they have specifically for communities that have historic preservation issues. You can tell by the look of it that it's not the normal metal Dollar General, block looking store. It's more of the country store look. It gives it that good sense of community. It fits in really well with the neighboring sites. We've been talking to some of the different neighbors with this. Let me see. We were meeting with the adjacent property owners. They've been in favor of it. Specifically, we did have conversations with the farmer to the north of this site. He is the owner of the Ott Farm. There was some discussion with him. We are actually investigating possibly buying some property from him. Unfortunately, this site, his property is locked up in the ag preservation. So we would be unable to purchase any property. So that's why that would be why we would necessitate to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. There's a setback that we need to get a variance from. And it's not that the building doesn't fit. It's just that part of this RB zoning says that you can't have parking in that setback. So we would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, again, have that public hearing, talk to them. The adjacent property owner doesn't have a problem with it. He was willing to sell his property to meet our setback requirement, but unfortunately, being that it's in ag preservation, it's not something that we're able to do. And I think it's actually beneficial in a sense that we know that property is not going to be developed since it is in the ag preservation. They can't just build a house right beside us. The property directly to the south is it's a pharmacy. It's pretty heavily used. It keeps busy. Definitely has customers going in and out. It's definitely more substantial than the site that we're developing. Site we're developing consists of a fair-sized building, not nearly as big as what we're proposing, but it also has a mobile home and a couple sheds that are on it. What we're proposing, we think, is going to be a much more beneficial, much more appealing to the people that are driving into Sharpsburg, coming on Route 34. It's going to be a more professional look. I mean, the site that's there now has a gravel parking lot, and it is a little bit smaller, but we will be definitely making it something that's going to fit in with the community, something that's going to look good. I know a lot of the people that are in Sharpsburg, they currently drive down 34, and they really have two options: drive all the way to Hagerstown if they need to get something, or they have to drive all the way to Shepherdstown. And that's basically giving our tax dollars to the people in West Virginia that we want to keep in Washington County.
Adam, Randy Wagner, can I interrupt just for a second, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking on Google Earth. There's really, other than a farm, am I looking at this right? There's no residence anywhere near it, is there? I mean, private residence. There's a railroad museum, a farm, and fields. Is that what I'm saying? There's no homes anywhere right around it, right?
No, well, no, the closest homes would be far enough, well, you're not gonna see this from your house. I'd say the closest home would be going north into Shepherdstown or into Sharpsburg.
Right, I see that. Like I said, I'm looking on Google Earth. So then, and the easement, the parking, you got enough parking the way it is. It looks anyway, doesn't it?
Correct. Yeah, we have plenty of parking. The only thing is, and this is kind of unique to the RB zoning, and it's because that it's adjoining. It's adjoining a farm that has a residence on it. So it's the ordinance states that if there's not just a residence, but if it's a residentially zoned, or if you could have a house on it. So being that it's a farm and it has a house that's 700 feet away and you're not going to see it, it still counts as being a residential property. So we have to have the parking out of the setback. So we will be going to the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask them to reduce that setback so that we can have a building in it, but so that we can have the parking inside that setback.
Just two more
Adam.
quick questions. There's a railroad track right behind it, right?
Correct.
And someone mentioned emails. I didn't see those. There was no opposition, right? So far.
Yeah, I didn't see any emails, but I know that of course,
someone mentioned it at the beginning.
yeah,
of this.
I guess Rebecca had gotten emails, but
There were several emails, and they did express concern and desire for a public hearing or public input. And,
Right. But it would have to go to zoning anyway, right?
Well, but and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I guess this is how I feel about it. There's local historical sentiment there, and I think that the town is going to be very sensitive to the historical aspect of the surrounding area. I mean, just remember how concerned the town was about the design of the school. I don't think that a BZA setback hearing is enough of a public hearing to allow public input on the overall change to the neighborhood. In my opinion, we should go ahead and have that hearing, allow the public their say, and then make a determination. That's my opinion, and of course, the rest of the board has an opportunity here for to express their thoughts on this. And so I'll open it up to the rest of the board and allow them to share their feelings about this.
I had two phone calls on it. People's biggest concern was it's a museum now, 1 to 4 cars a day versus a Dollar General being there with 4 to 5 cars in the lot all the time. That was their concern. Is it a minor change or a major change? There we do the traffic. That was their concern.
And Denny, Denny, you and I were in Sharpsburg for a meeting a couple of years ago where there is a significant amount of traffic, and the concern that it is the only route between West Virginia and that part of the county. And so again, my opinion again is that we should have a public hearing and allow the public's input before we make a final determination.
Yeah, I did talk to a few of the council people, the mayor, assistant mayor, the clerk, and she got a few phone calls in Sharpsburg. And just like you said, Clint, there's a lot of West Virginia traffic that go through Sharpsburg daily to Brunswick to catch the train. So there again, is it minor or major change?
This is Dave. Yeah, I don't see how you can say it's not a major change. I think it is. And I'm not saying if I'm for it or against it, because I don't have an opinion on the project at all. But going from a small family-owned gallery, and I know a little bit about small family-owned galleries because my dad had one for 30 years. Going from that to a chain, and the AT&T bought his property, tore it down, and put up the AT&T in Boonesboro, and this is a major change, and I think the public needs a chance to give input. Maybe there are those that are for it, maybe there are those that are against it, but I don't see how you can not give them opportunities, plenty of opportunities to provide input on this.
And you know, David, I agree with you too. I think once they take a look at these pictures, they may look at this and say, this is not that big of a deal. It's certainly, from the photos that have been presented tonight, looks like it could be a very nice project for the town. You know, and I don't think I'd necessarily be opposed to it. But I just, my thought, and this is the last I'll speak about it, I'll let everyone else make the determination, but my thought was that the townspeople really should have some input before we move forward. Any other comments on this?
So this is BJ. So I agree with those comments. Adam, just out of curiosity, I mean, have you talked to Hose Pharmacy? Have you talked to the Sharpsburg Pharmacy? I mean, what are they feeling about it?
I personally haven't talked to the pharmacy. I talked to the owner of the Ott Farm because I was in part with the negotiation and trying to talk to him about purchasing some of the property. I have our clients on here as well. I'm not sure if they had a chance to speak with the pharmacy. I just wanted to kind of chime in on the one thing. I mean, I understand what you're saying. If we're zooming in on a microscope and just looking at just this site, going from what it is now to what we're proposing, I can definitely see your point. But I mean, being that we're right beside the pharmacy, and I don't see a Dollar General being that much more intense than what the pharmacy is. If we had an approved plan from this site, then comparing that plan to this plan would definitely say like, hey, it's definitely a major change. But it's up to you guys. It's definitely something that we look to you guys to decide for us. I just think that with the pharmacy and this being the commercial area for something like this to go, that we thought that there was a chance. I mean, we're looking at if it was just going to one public hearing and having one meeting and working it out, it's just kind of more the whole, well, we have to go through a lengthy process where I'm talking adding months to this project where we feel that it's definitely a good fit for the neighborhood. Obviously, we want to have something that the community likes. We want them to go there. We like the idea that it's on Route 34 because there is traffic there. There's lots of traffic there, but it's adequate for what we're proposing, and we want to take advantage of the traffic that's already there. I don't think that we're going to be generating a lot of new traffic. Just the people that are already there will be stopping by this place to do business. So I definitely see your point, but we're kind of hoping that we could avoid some of the lengthy process of going through it's almost like a rezoning hearing versus going to one public hearing.
Hey, Clint, Randy, I'm not going to be able to vote on this because it sounds like it might be heading in a direction. Personally, I'm all about economic development. I think if we don't have economic development, then we never want to raise taxes or generate any more revenue that's not economic development. So I look at that. I sort of, I won't have a whole lot to say until the public hearing, and I might have more say. But I always want to hear what the people have to say. And Sharpsburg is sort of a funny place sometimes about how they want to keep their town. I'm looking at this building. I think it would be a real nice fit personally. And I also think that we aren't going to generate much more traffic. It's not going to be a destination. It's going to be a convenience for the local people right across the river and Sharpsburg people. I'm not going to drive that Dollar General in Sharpsburg for sure. But again, if the consensus, I'm not going to be voting on this, but if, I'll stick with anything you guys decide. I think they've thought this out with what this store looks like. I think it does look like it belongs in Sharpsburg if the people so choose to leave it come there.
Yeah, this is Dave again. I agree with Randy 100%, but as historically sensitive as the whole area of the county is, I just think that you need to provide ample opportunity for everybody. I mean, our opinions, we have our opinions, and as I said, I'm not saying I'm, for it or against it, but I think we need to give everybody the opportunity to speak about it. That one, and like you said, there may be those that that see this as a big improvement on that spot. But I think the main point is we need to listen to what the folks there have to say.
I agree with Dave.
Yep.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, then we would need a motion.
This is Dave. I would make a motion that we deem this as a major change requiring a public hearing.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
This is Denny, and I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right, thank you.
Hey,
everybody.
note that, now, Dave, Clint, note that I recused myself from that vote.
Okay, absolutely, Randy. Randy Wagner did recuse himself from the vote, as this may ultimately end up before the commissioners. The next item on this evening's agenda is update of staff approvals from Ashley Holloway. Deb did send an email with an attachment that had these in them. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to look those over. Ashley, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Holloway. I am the Director of Plan Review and Permitting for Washington County. As you see the report before you, a lot has been going on in the office. You see there's 60 inspection and maintenance agreements issued for June. There have been 7 grading permits, 5 standard grading and 2 site-specific grading. Only 1 site plan for the month, but we still have at least 17 or 18 out there thus far for the year. There was 1 forest stand delineation plan submitted, and there were 2 subdivision replats submitted. And again, you can look at the report and see exactly what they are. And just for FYI, for permits, that you see there are 21 grading permits issued, 16 entrance permits, and 3 utility permits. So, you know, this is our busy season. It's the warmer months. It's the summer. And construction is still moving forward, which is a good thing for our county. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any, but I just have a comment. I think it's fantastic that with everything that's been going on in the last few months, that this county still is seeing the kind of you know, work being done and permits being pulled. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's a good sign.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, same here. Yes.
Very good. Thank you for your report, Ashley.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Hearing no other questions, we'll go to the next item under other business. It is annual report, and Travis Allen has that. Travis?
Actually, Clint, this is Jill Baker. I'm going to do the report on that. Travis is the one who kind of compiled everything, but I wanted to go over the final report with you just to give you an idea of what has happened over the last calendar year in 2019. As you know, each year we're required to compile this annual report for the state of Maryland. And it's always good for us to be compiling this data anyway for our own purposes, to know where we stand. It's a pretty formal application that we fill out and submit to the state. The first section talks about new residential permits. You can see in calendar year 2019, which is January 1 through December 31, we had a total of almost 200 new residential permits. The majority of those being inside a PFA or priority funding area. State is closely watching the priority funding areas to make sure that growth is occurring in those areas where infrastructure is available and growth makes sense. So you can see that we are sticking to that, that the majority of new permits is occurring within those designated priority funding areas. They also want to report on any changes that we make in our growth changes or development patterns, which pertains to our rezoning cases. You're all very familiar with those. I'm not going to go through that. Those are the rezoning cases that we have had over the last year, both with our zoning ordinance and with our water and sewer plan. Section 3 talks about our development capacity analysis. That'll be updated as part of our comprehensive plan update that's coming up. And we've responded that way in the narrative. Section 4 deals with our agricultural land preservation programs. We have a very robust program. You're all familiar with that. Right there is an accounting on page 5 of the different and various programs that we use, how many acres we preserved, and how much value that was over the last year. As a note there, we have a goal of 50,000 acres to preserve, and right now we are right around a little more than 34,000 acres, so a little over 60 couple percent. So we're doing quite well with our land preservation goals. Section 5 deals with measures and indicators. It just, again, is a more formal breakdown of what has happened inside and outside our priority funding areas, in terms of subdivisions, residential growth, so forth and so on, major, minor subdivisions. Again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about that, but that gives you a fairly good breakdown of what has occurred over the last calendar year. Again, the state watching what's happening inside versus outside priority funding areas. They talk about, in this section, not just residential, but they also look at commercial growth, which you can see on page 8. Section 6 of the report talks about the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. The state is always watching to make sure that growth is managed but not stunted. So they're always looking for ways that we're managing our growth, but also finding ways to mitigate what needs to be mitigated for. As you all know, we have an Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance that covers roads, schools, public water, public sewer, and fire protection. This section goes into some detail about each of those different sections and how we mitigate for any kind of impacts on our infrastructure, and first of all, how we mitigated, second of all, what the impacts of that were. So like I said, that talks about each of those different areas. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail about that. The last section is just a survey that the state throws out there when other jurisdictions are looking for information, other agencies, in this case, MDOT, looking for information on bicycle and pedestrian plans. And you can see the answers there. This has been submitted to the state of Maryland. It is due July 1st of every year. So it was submitted a couple weeks ago. We wanted to make sure that you had a copy in your hand. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have about this.
Any questions from members of the board? I hear no questions. Thank you, Jill.
Yep.
The next item is the comprehensive plan update, transportation element. I'm sure that Travis is the planner for this. Travis?
Yes. So we're continuing to move forward with writing the comprehensive plan, despite all the hurdles with COVID-19 and all that kind of stuff. So we're doing the transportation element here tonight to get your input and comment and answer any questions you have on the draft that was sent to you. In the coming months, you should probably be seeing a few more drafts coming your way. We have housing as well as ag and forestry just about ready to go as well too. So we're continuing to move forward with this plan. In terms of the transportation element, as you can see on the slide there, the transportation element establishes goals and policies for the maintenance and improvement of the overall multimodal transportation system for the county. So multimodal meaning all of those different modes of travel that make up our network, from roads to rail transportation, the airport, transit, all of them working together to make up our network. The element also recognizes the relationship between land use and transportation and promotes an intermodal system. So connections between all of those different modes of travel in order to promote efficiencies. And so we're looking to analyze strengths and weaknesses and identify future needs for this particular mode of travel. The next slide, just to give you some context of some of the things I was thinking about when writing this chapter. Transportation investments, of course, affect many other elements of the comprehensive plan that affect community character and quality of life, which would include many other elements, but economic development, housing, community facilities are just a few examples of things that are affected by the transportation network that we build. These kind of investments have a strong influence on land development patterns, whether we build out compact versus sprawling, according to some of the metrics that Jill was just talking about in the annual report. And as the county becomes more urbanized over the time horizon of this comprehensive plan update, it's probably going to require us to consider other modes of travel a little bit more than we have in the past to avoid some of the negative effects of congestion and sprawl that might be occurring as the county continues to build out. And in saying that, it's not to say that what we are doing in the past is wrong. I think the goal is just to really promote and give people opportunities for different choices in making their transportation decisions each day. Building upon that idea, a couple of fundamental principles that are inherent in a lot of transportation planning is this sort of complementary tension between mobility planning and accessibility planning. In the United States, I think we've always had a strong focus on mobility planning, which is sort of getting people or goods from A to B in the quickest and most efficient manner. Considered a little bit less, I think, is the accessibility side of transportation planning, which is the ease by which people can reach the places that they're actually trying to get to, whether that's work, school, daycare, services, whatever it might be. So you kind of have to have those two different concepts working together, both the accessibility side as well as the mobility side. And I think it's important we ask when we build these kind of facilities what the community's needs actually are as we implement our plans and build these kind of facilities for our communities. On the next slide, you can see that in order for transportation to come together, it really takes the work of a lot of different organizations and entities at a lot of different levels. At the county level, of course, we have the CIP projects, which are primarily carried out by engineering in cooperation with other departments. That 10-year plan budgets money for the airport, bridges, railroad crossings, roads, as well as transit. At the regional level, you have the MPO, which in order to receive federal money for road transportation as well as other modes of travel, they have to engage in producing continuous transportation plans for the metropolitan region. That in this area includes Washington, Berkeley, and Jefferson counties, as well as some affiliated local jurisdictions in this region as well. The MPO produces a variety of different plans, but the two principal documents that they produce would be the long-range transportation plan, which covers a 25-year time horizon, and then the TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, which then pulls a 4-year list of priorities from that LRTP. And then finally, at the state level, you have the Maryland Department of Transportation, which encompasses many departments associated with each of the different travel modes. Their major long-range plan is called the Maryland Transportation Plan, and that establishes a 20-year vision for the state. From that is pulled the Consolidated Transportation Plan, which is a 6-year capital budget that does gain local input, particularly from the priority letters that are submitted by counties and municipalities to the state to give our priorities. Looking next just briefly at the regulations that affect transportation in the county. Probably familiar with most of these, but as Jill was again just mentioning in her report, the APFO is a big one that ensures the adequacy of roads concurrent with new development. For new roads, that particularly relies on traffic studies to determine what impact that new development would have on our roadways. For existing roads, we have a document called the Street and Highway Adequacy Policy Manual that is produced by the Engineering Department. Both the zoning and subdivision ordinances have standards for roads within them as well too. And the comprehensive plan lays out the long-term vision for transportation in this element that we're looking at here tonight, and establishes long-term priorities in the highway plan that's a part of the overall plan. Next slide. Near the beginning of the document, there's a bunch of different indicators that kind of show how people in Washington County travel now and what our travel habits are. And one that I wanted to pull out just for your attention here in this summary here tonight comes from census data, and you can see that between 2000 and 2016, so roughly, the time period since the last comprehensive plan, we have remained pretty steady at 80% of people commuting by single occupancy vehicle. So again, in a rural county such as Washington County, I think we're always going to be a bit road dependent, no matter what we do. But again, giving people choices of different options for how they go about their day, I think there's some room for improvement there over the course of time. You can see by the statistics for those other modes of travel shown in the car there on the chart. Building off of that as well too, part of the idea of providing choice for other transportation modes is a big thing in transportation planning anymore is system resiliency. And we've had some events recently where, roads have been shut down by severe weather or that kind of thing. And it helps to have other options available if some of those other travel modes get shut down by events such as this. So that's kind of part of the picture as well too. Looking now from this point at each of the different travel modes that are covered in this chapter. At the beginning of each chapter, I lay out different design and planning concepts that are related to each of the different travel modes. And this just kind of gives you an idea of some of the key terms and concepts that are associated with each of those travel modes that transportation planners are working on. So for road transportation, that's things like capacity, level of service gives the operational conditions of the road an actual letter grade. The functional classification groups roads and streets into a hierarchy to kind of form that system by which roads are accomplishing different purposes throughout the county. Access management is another concept for road design in which you're trying to control the number of entrance points, particularly onto major roadways. So things like median treatments and a variety of other strategies is another design concept. On the next slide, you can see an example of one of those concepts. This is our most recent functional road classification system. And you can see all the roads accomplishing different tasks depending on what level of traffic they're slated to carry. So from the interstates all the way down to the arterioles, collector roads, and then eventually down to the local roads serving mostly residential communities. On the next slide, a couple of other concepts. Transportation demand management is the idea that instead of kind of building roads and then hoping that capacity alleviates the effects of congestion and some of those other problems, thinking about strategies to reduce some of that front-end demand before you actually build the road. So things like transit investments, ride sharing, tolls, various strategies like that, so that once you build the road, you've done everything that you can to make sure that it lasts a while. And the final concept that you see there, traffic calming, involves just different design interventions, particularly in urbanized areas to promote a more safe roadway environment for different user groups, and improve the livability of that neighborhood that the road is traveling through. In that respect, I think Washington County is already pretty well positioned in a lot of our towns and municipalities, just simply because of the historic development and design of a lot of our communities. I think they already inherently have some of those features of traffic calming present already with the, sort of narrow roads and things like that. So I think we have a good foundation to build on there with that particular idea. Next slide, this is pulled from the long-range transportation plan from the MPO, just to give you an idea of what some of the county's priorities have been for road transportation looking out into the future. Some of these projects have already been accomplished actually, or are currently in progress. So likely when we finally get this plan adopted, some of these will change, but that just gives you an idea of some of the county's priorities for roads. Looking next at transit, as most in the commission I'm sure are aware, the county is the major transit provider through the county commuter system, which has 9 fixed routes and 19 vehicles. It also provides paratransit service for individuals with disabilities. We have access to regional commuter bus services through some of our park and ride lots, and then a variety of different public, private, nonprofit, and other entities provide human service transportation for various groups of need throughout the county. And the MPO also produces a plan for human service transportation specifically as well. In 2010, the MPO, along with a consultant, produced a transit development plan. This study looked at various metrics amongst its conclusions for where transit needs were the greatest. So looking at indicators like zero vehicle households, elderly populations, people with disabilities, and people below the poverty line to figure out exactly where transit needs were the greatest. And not surprisingly, because that's where most of our population is, the needs were greatest inside of the urban growth area, particularly within the city of Hagerstown, also in the town of Williamsport. And of course, there is needs as well in the areas not currently served by transit, which would be the southern and western portions of the county. But if we're looking to add additional money to transit at any point, the plan concluded that these are some of the places that would benefit the most. Looking next at bicycle, pedestrian, and trails. The county, I think, is already uniquely positioned, again, I think because of the outstanding recreational facilities we have for these travel modes, which I'm sure we've all enjoyed at one time in our lives or another, from the rail trail to the Appalachian Trail to the canal towpath to all of the different investments the city of Hagerstown has made for bicycling and walking. So the question for the county really is, I think, how can we build off this existing set of resources to further support that and enhance opportunities for these user groups. One possible way to accomplish that a lot of different jurisdictions have adopted across the country is the Complete Streets policy. That policy is a comprehensive and integrated policy that requires roads and adjacent rights-of-way to be planned, designed, operated, and maintained in a manner that facilitates safe travel for all ages, abilities, and modes of travel. I think it's typically adopted as an ordinance or a resolution by local jurisdictions. The MPO has actually already adopted this policy. It's something that the county could think about doing as well, I believe. But it's important to understand that by adopting this policy, it does not require that you provide space for all these different modes of travel in every case where a road is built. It just simply says that you should examine the possibility to see if there's adequate right-of-way space and whether it's appropriate for the context of the area that you're building that facility. So you're not necessarily going to, build a bike lane out in the middle of the rural part of the county if it's not warranted, but it just says that you look at the options that are available for the right-of-way space that you have available. in terms of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, really what you're looking at in providing these facilities is determining whether or not you can provide dedicated space to those different user groups. And part of the reason for that is that if you're looking to sort of push people in the direction of making some of their trips by these modes of travel, most people who are not inherently comfortable, walking and bicycling on busy roadways and in those kind of environments, they tend to be more receptive to the idea if you provide them with dedicated space. So again, it depends on the context of the street environment. In some cases where you don't really have adequate space for bicycles, something like the Shero that you see on the left side of the screen, where you just put some paint on the street to alert motorists to the fact that bicyclists are there, is a decent option, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you create something like a shared use path, which fully separates bicycles and walkers from traffic entirely so they don't have to share the same space and provides them with greater comfort. Along the right side of the slide there, the pedestrian treatments are probably a little bit more familiar to people. The picture on the top is some of the design interventions near City Park in Hagerstown. So you can see the refuge island there that allows people to funnel in from the roundabout and pause before they cross the street, across a busy roadway. And then some other facilities that people are more familiar with in terms of curb ramps for people with disabilities, and sidewalks are, of course, very familiar to everyone. The recreational trails, one of the more recent ongoing, I guess you could start to call it a success stories in the county, is the continued development of the Antietam Creek Water Trail, in which we're trying to continue to formalize some of these historic put-ins and takeouts along that wonderful waterway that we have. The picture there, Kiwanis Park is one I'm sure people are all familiar with. That has provided great access to the creek in that location of the county. But the county is continuing to look at opportunities to build onto this water trail to promote greater use of the creek. And we are, even still this year, looking at Project Open Space money from DNR to continue working on some of these projects. Looking next at freight transportation, of course, one method by which freight is moved in the county is by trucking. At the junction of two interstates, this is obviously a very important industry for us. And so one of the things is to figure out how we can leverage that important industry while also looking to mitigate its negative effects. The MPO's long-range transportation plan does forecast an increase of 7,000 to 10,000 daily truck trips along particularly the interstates over the next 25 years. So that's something we're going to have to contend with. One of the ways we're going to have to contend with that is to figure out opportunities for truck parking. I know truck parking can sometimes be controversial in terms of the neighboring communities by there, but I think, if we're sensitive to where some of these facilities are sited, and look at different design interventions to protect communities from some of the noise and other externalities, this is certainly a need that we have to help fulfill, because as long as people are looking to have on-time delivery of goods and services from Amazon and other providers, that's something that we're going to need to accommodate. Another method by which goods are moved, of course, is by rail transportation. One strategy that has been pursued in a lot of different places around the country is the development of intermodal facilities, which divert some of this truck traffic and the freight onto rail transportation. And of course, we have the example of the one across the state line in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, which I know has not done quite as well as people have hoped. I think at this point they're mostly reorienting their business plan more so than abandoning that project. But in a lot of locations in the country, these intermodal facilities have been beneficial in terms of reducing some of the congestion on major roadways. Finally, we have the airport. As you can see in the top bullet there, the airport is a big driver of business revenue in the county. You can see second among Maryland's public use airports. So what we're looking to do in our supported policies and recommendations is to continue to promote that as a true commercial flight destination that serves some of the larger airports in the region, and also to ensure that we're making sure that the airport has the ability to expand in the future and not come into conflict with incompatible land uses in the vicinity, which is partially accomplished by the airport overlay zone that we have in our zoning code. So to wrap things up here, again, I think mostly what we're trying to do is move people and goods, but also make sure that when we build these transportation facilities, that we're both improving quality of life and making sure we're creating opportunities for people and not necessarily presenting barriers to their participation in daily life. So at this point, if anybody has any questions about my summary or anything that you read in the chapter, you're welcome to ask me or Jill as well too, who of course works very closely with the MPO and is very familiar with the county's policies regarding transportation as well too.
Thank you, Travis. I appreciate your presentation. Any members of the commission have any questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Travis. This is Randy. I thought it was a very good presentation. I appreciate that.
Yep, likewise. Jill, Travis, nice job. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I am one who is in favor of more outdoor walking and biking spaces. I'm a regular user of the canal and the rails and trails, as well as I get out on the river at any opportunity I can. Managed to get on a bike and kayak on the river this weekend. And so, I think that that part of your presentation in particular is of interest to not just me, but to many of the people that look at Washington County as a place to come as a tourist destination, not just for our historical attractions, but also for our outdoor ones. Any other comments? All right, well, thanks again for that, Travis, and Jill also for your work on this. Looking at our agenda tonight, that concludes the agenda. I do need a motion for adjournment.
Danny, make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Randy second. Randy second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
All right, good night, everybody.